They said the janitor stole it, but when they opened his notebook, they realized he wrote it first. The clock above the maintenance wing flickered past 2:57 a.m., humming faintly against the silence that ruled MIT at that hour. The hallways of the control systems department were empty, washed in the pale blue of emergency lights. Only one man remained. A mop bucket stood by the door of room B214, its wheels squeaking softly as Thomas Reed, the night janitor, leaned on his mop handle, a wooden stick with a small carving near the top, 3 faint symbols, almost like part of an equation. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not anymore. This was the lab of Dr. Harold Voss, the rising star of adaptive control theory. The kind of man who wore silence like armor and fame like perfume. But Reed was harmless, they said. Just an old man who kept the corridors clean and the coffee machines running. He moved to the whiteboard, still cluttered with the remains of last night's research. Matrices, lambda symbols, arrows pointing nowhere. He stared at it for a long time, breathing through the ache in his chest. Then, as if guided by memory, he picked up a piece of chalk. His handwriting was slow but deliberate. He wrote dx x plus b u k x. Then he paused, frowned, and rewrote the last line. K equal R1 BT. A faint smile crossed his lips. You're almost stable, he whispered, not to the system, but to himself. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall again, gliding over the dome roofs of MIT like pale ghosts. The janitor wiped the board gently with a rag, his mind replaying the rhythm of the factory pumps he used to fix decades ago, when math still felt like music, not theft. He'd worked in a pump plant in Worcester before the recession swallowed it whole. Back then, he'd noticed how the feedback delay in the water regulators matched the same instability he now saw in the lab's code. A loop too eager to correct itself, overshooting endlessly. To him, it wasn't theory. It was the hum of real pipes and rusted screws. He scratched a small note beneath the matrix. Delay compensation, T0.8S for stability. Then, under it, he wrote something even stranger, a personal line. If this ever works, it'll stop the pump from hurting people. The door opened. A voice broke the quiet. Mr. Reed? He turned. Maya Chen, a sophomore in electrical engineering, stood there holding a thermos of coffee. Her hair was messy, her voice still sleepy. You're still cleaning this late? Reed smiled faintly. Pipes don't sleep. Maya noticed the equations on the board. You wrote that? He hesitated. Just cleaning what's broken. She stepped closer, scanning the symbols. Her brow furrowed. That's a variant of the feedback law Dr. Voss has been chasing all semester. The cross term in P... It's correct. Reed wiped part of the board too quickly, embarrassed. Don't tell him. He doesn't like janitors doing homework. Maya laughed softly, but there was something uneasy in her gaze. You sure you're not an engineer? Reed's hands trembled slightly as he put the chalk down. I used to be, before papers had price tags. He packed his mop, rolled the bucket back into the hallway. Behind him, the whiteboard still glowed under the fluorescent light, half cleaned, half covered in equations that, if you looked closely, resembled the exact form of the stability function Voss's team had been trying to perfect for months. When Maya left, she glanced back once more. Reed was kneeling by a broken pipe under the sink, humming an old tune, whispering equations under his breath like prayers. The next morning, the board was spotless. But when Dr. Voss entered the lab, his assistant paused. Sir, "You should see this," she said, pointing to the faint chalk residue still visible beneath the cleaner's polish. Voss squinted, then reached for his phone and took a photo before wiping it completely. That afternoon, Maya saw the same equation, the exact same one, appear on Voss's presentation slides. The audience applauded. Words like breakthrough, efficient delay compensation, multi-loop stability control filled the air. Voss smiled, modest and cold, and said, "This came to me last night, around 3 a.m., after weeks of sleepless thought." Somewhere in the maintenance hall below, Thomas Reed filled his mop bucket, unaware that his chalk marks had been reborn under someone else's name. When he opened his locker that night, a single page had slipped from his notebook. On it were the same equations, but written months earlier, smudged with old coffee stains and oil fingerprints. He stared at them for a long time, then whispered to no one, "Funny how truth always looks like dirt before it shines." He folded the page carefully, tucked it back into the notebook, and locked it away. The hallway lights dimmed to night mode. The sound of the mop gliding over tile echoed through the empty building, rhythmic, patient, like a man cleaning the floor of a future that had already stolen his name. Morning came slow over Cambridge. The sun didn't rise. It just appeared, pale and cold. Inside Building B214, the air still smelled of disinfectant and chalk. The memory of last night still lingered, though no one remembered it, except one man. Dr. Harold Voss stood by the window. His reflection floated in the frost. He was brilliant, yes, but his brilliance had teeth. Everything about him, the tie, the tone, the posture, spoke of control and hunger. Yet that morning something in him felt borrowed. He opened his tablet. On the screen, the delay compensation algorithm. It was perfect, too clean to be his. Dr. Voss, Carmen Lee, his assistant, stepped in. "The dean approved your paper," she said. "They're calling it the Voss feedback model. The journal wants it by Friday." He nodded slowly. "Good. Run the simulations again. I want full stability." Carmen hesitated. "The cross term in the cost function. I don't remember that before. Did you add it?" "I did," he said, too quickly. She smiled nervously. "It looks different, almost like handwriting." He forced a grin. "Genius often looks like a mistake before it's published." When she left, Voss zoomed in on the photo he'd taken last night, the faint chalk marks under the cleaner's haze. The handwriting was uneven, clumsy, but alive. Whoever wrote it had seen order inside chaos, something he hadn't. Down in the maintenance hall, Thomas Reed pushed his mop bucket into storage. His back ached. His hands were cracked and raw from the cleaner. He opened his locker. Inside, a lunchbox, a thermos, and a duct-taped notebook. On the cover, System Notes, Reed T. Worcester Plant, 1997. He flipped it open. Diagrams, loops, equations. The same system he'd sketched on the board last night. He traced the line with his finger. Delta X equals AX plus BU, UE K X K equals R1 B transpose P. Under it, his own note, adaptive delay reduction through empirical tuning. He sighed. Should have patented it when I still had a job. Upstairs, the department meeting was full of smiles. "You've done it again, Harold," said one professor. "This could change everything. Lockheed, Siemens, they'll come calling." Voss smiled back. "We just followed the math." But in his mind, he saw the chalk lines. Human. Imperfect. alive. And it bothered him. That night, Maya Chen came back to the lab. Same coffee thermos, same curiosity. She opened her laptop and pulled up the security backup. On the screen, a faint ghost image of the whiteboard from 2:58 a.m. There it was, the janitor's handwriting, and the tiny correction beside it, tau equals 0.8 seconds. Her hands trembled. She compared it with Voss's preprint. It was identical. Same number, same coefficient. Reed's chalk, 2:58 a.m. Voss's paper, 4:17 a.m. She wrote in her notebook, "He didn't steal from a scientist. He stole from a man cleaning the floor." 2 days later, the rumors spread. A janitor had been caught tampering with academic property. Hallways buzzed, students whispered, professors turned away. Then the newspaper hit the stands. MIT janitor caught stealing research notes. The photo showed Reed from behind, head down, holding a cardboard box. Inside, a thermos, a mop head, and a single notebook. That night, Voss couldn't sleep. He dreamed of leaking pumps, of rough hands fixing what others ignored. He woke with sweat on his neck. "It's mine now," he whispered. But even he didn't believe it. He opened the equation again. There. A faint note beneath the matrix, almost erased. It read, "Stability isn't the absence of error. It's knowing where it lives." He stared at it for a long time. That wasn't math. That was a confession. At 4 a.m., Dr. Harold Voss deleted the note, but the words stayed, like an echo he couldn't silence. And across the city, Thomas Reed sat alone in a diner, stirring cold coffee. He had no idea that his life's one true idea was already being printed under another man's name. The news broke on a Wednesday morning. Cold wind whipped through the MIT courtyard as students scrolled their phones, reading the headline, "MIT janitor arrested for stealing research data." The photo showed him, Thomas Reed, wrists hidden by his coat sleeves, eyes down, a plastic badge still clipped to his shirt. They said he'd broken into Dr. Voss's lab. They said he copied data worth millions. They said he was lucky they didn't press full charges. None of them said the truth. That morning, Reed sat in a gray interrogation room on campus security grounds. He looked small against the white walls, hands clasped on the table. Across from him sat the university compliance officer, a woman in a navy suit, voice sharp, eyes tired. "Mr. Reed," she said, "the internal report claims you accessed research materials without authorization. You entered Lab B214 after hours. Is that correct?" "I was cleaning," he said quietly. "Did you or did you not alter the whiteboard content used by Dr. Voss's research group?" He hesitated. "I erased smudges, fixed some writing." She leaned forward. "Fixed? You wrote something, didn't you?" He nodded. "A correction." Her pen froze. "A correction? You're admitting to tampering." Reed's voice trembled. "It wasn't tampering. The equation, it was wrong. I only—" But she'd already stopped listening. By afternoon, he was escorted out of the building. No one met his eyes. Students whispered from corners. In his hand, a cardboard box. Inside it, a lunchbox, a pair of gloves, and his old notebook. Someone shouted, "Hey, Einstein, clean this!" Laughter followed. He didn't turn back. Maya watched it all from a window on the second floor. Her heart clenched. She'd seen the backup files, she knew the timestamps, but she also knew what would happen if she spoke. No one challenged a tenured star like Voss. Still, she printed the log anyway. 2 pages. Camera timestamp, 2:58 a.m. Dr. Voss's upload, 4:17 a.m. She slipped the papers into her backpack. Her fingers shook. That evening, Voss gave a talk to the faculty board. "The allegations are regrettable," he said smoothly, "but academic integrity must be protected." Applause followed. Cameras flashed. Behind him, on the projector, his discovery glowed in bold white text. The Voss feedback model. For a moment, the applause turned hollow, even to him. He saw the faint shadow of chalk strokes behind the digital graph, the ghost of another man's hand. He blinked, and it was gone. In a small apartment on the edge of campus, Thomas Reed sat at his table. His wife's photo stood near the lamp, smiling, frozen in time. She'd passed 5 years earlier. Heart failure. He opened his notebook, turned to the page with the old equation. The same one now being shown on every academic feed in Boston. He traced the ink with his finger. The paper was worn thin. Next to it, he'd once written, "If this ever works, maybe fewer pumps will fail. Maybe fewer hearts, too." He smiled bitterly. They'd stolen that, too. Knocking broke the silence. Maya stood at the door, soaked from the rain. "Mr. Reed?" He looked up, startled. "You shouldn't be here." She handed him the printed logs. "I think you should see this." He unfolded the paper, scanning the times. The numbers hit him like a hammer. She whispered, "They used your work." He stared at her. "How do you know?" "I saw your handwriting," she said softly. "And his slides." Silence hung heavy, the kind that hurts more than words. Reed exhaled, slow and weary. "It doesn't matter," he said. "They'll never believe a janitor." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Then we'll make them." Outside, thunder rolled over the Charles River. In the window's reflection, the two figures stood, the old janitor and the young student, a faint light flickering between them. Somewhere in the city, a printer hummed as Voss's paper finalized submission. The system was already locking in his name, but in the quiet of that dim apartment, the truth had finally found a witness. Rain fell hard that night. Cambridge glowed in reflections, orange lamps on wet pavement, water sliding down glass. Inside his apartment, Thomas Reed sat in silence. The notebook lay open on the table, pages warped from years of sweat, oil, and time. Across from him, Maya Chen sat still, hands folded. The printed logs she brought were spread out between them like crime evidence. 2:58, she said quietly. "That's when you wrote it." He nodded. "And 4:17, she continued. "That's when Voss uploaded his version." Reed rubbed his face. "Even if that's true," he said, "I can't prove I didn't steal it from him first." "You don't need to prove it," she said. "You just need to show you had it first." Her eyes dropped to the notebook. "Can I look?" He hesitated, then slid it toward her. The spine cracked as she opened it. Inside were pages of equations, sketches of pumps, systems, wiring, pressure loops, every line precise, every diagram touched by years of use. Near the middle, she found the first draft, the feedback model that matched Voss's paper exactly. Right beneath it, dated in pencil, November 4th, 2016. Her heart pounded. "This was years ago." Reed didn't answer. He just stared at the rain outside. When she turned another page, something caught her eye. Faint fingerprints pressed into the paper, coated with grease. And at the bottom of one diagram, in tiny letters, he had written, "Stability achieved. Delay compensated manually." It was his writing. The same curvature. The same habit of writing numbers like words. She whispered, "It's all here." He gave a tired laugh. "Yeah, too late now." "No," she said. "Not too late." Later that night, while Reed slept in his chair, Maya quietly took photos of each page. Every date, every signature. Then she flipped to the back cover and froze. Tucked inside was an old envelope, yellow with age. On it, patent draft. Read control method. She opened it carefully. Inside were typewritten pages from 1998, never filed. And at the bottom, a rejection letter. Your application lacks sufficient theoretical foundation. Suggest resubmission under industrial repair, not academic research. Maya's eyes widened. He'd tried, decades ago. He'd tried to tell the world, and they told him he wasn't educated enough to own his own discovery. She looked over at him, asleep, head tilted against the lamplight. His hands were rough, scarred, hands that built, not published. She whispered, "You were right before they ever were." The next morning, Reed woke to sunlight. Maya was gone, but the notebook was neatly stacked beside his coffee cup. A note was taped to the cover. "Meet me at the archives. I found something." At the campus archive, Maya waited by the microfilm scanner. She looked tired, but her eyes were alive. "I checked something," she said. "The university's old maintenance reports." She pulled out a printed sheet and handed it to him. The report dated November 2016, the same day as his notebook entry. It described a flooded pump room. Repair logged under. Read T. Comments. System stable after manual delay adjustment. TE 0.8S. She smiled faintly. Even the delay number is there. It's official record. He stared at the paper, silent. The truth was finally visible, and yet, he whispered, "They'll still believe him. He's got degrees. I've got a mop." Maya shook her head. "Then we'll use his world's rules. Data, dates, signatures." She opened her backpack, pulling out a drive. "I backed up everything. The notebook, the logs, the report." Reed looked at her, both grateful and afraid. "You shouldn't be doing this, Maya. He could destroy your career." She smiled sadly. "I don't have a career yet. I have a conscience." Outside, the bell tower chimed noon. Reed looked down at the paper in his hand, his handwriting beside the university seal. For the first time in years, his eyes filled. He whispered, "All my life, I just wanted to fix things. Pipes, pumps, equations. But people, you can't fix people." Maya's voice was soft. "Maybe not. But we can fix the record." That night, in her dorm room, Maya began compiling the evidence into a report. Subject, unauthorized use of intellectual property, Thomas Reed case. She hesitated before typing one last line at the bottom. "He cleaned the labs that built your future. The least we can do is clean his name." She hit save. Then she turned off the light and looked out toward the lab windows glowing across the campus, where truth was still hiding in plain sight. It was late again. The campus was quiet. Too quiet. Inside building B214, the air smelled of metal, wires, and betrayal. Maya moved carefully through the dark corridor, her flashlight sweeping over nameplates and half-open doors. Security would do their last round in 10 minutes. She had less than that. She reached the lab. Dr. Voss's lab. For a moment, she just stood there staring through the glass, remembering how the janitor once stood in this very spot, chalk in hand, writing what the world would soon call the Voss model. Now, she was here to prove he hadn't. She connected her laptop to the lab server. The screen blinked. A login prompt appeared. She typed in her student credentials. Denied. Then again, denied. Her pulse raced. She whispered, "Come on." Then she tried something else. The shared access code for maintenance logs. Facility staff 12. Access granted. The folder opened. Inside, night archive footage. January 12th. She clicked play. The security camera showed the lab from above. Empty, silent. A timestamp flickered in the corner. 2:57 a.m. Then a figure entered. Old jacket, cleaning cart, mop handle. Thomas Reed. He paused, stared at the whiteboard, then reached for a piece of chalk. His hands moved slow, deliberate. He wrote something, erased it, then wrote again. Maya leaned closer. The resolution was bad, but the rhythm, that calm precision, it was unmistakable. He wasn't guessing. He was solving. At 3:02, he stepped back, looked at the board, nodded. Then he wiped part of it, only the messy edges, and left. The board, in the dim light, still glowed faintly with his equation. It stayed there for 3 hours. Then, 6:11 a.m. Dr. Harold Voss entered. He looked tired, unshaven. He stared at the board, froze, and took out his phone. Flash. Another flash. He erased the board, then began copying the same formula into his notebook. Maya gasped. It was all there. Every second, recorded. She copied the footage to her drive, heart pounding. Then she noticed another file, Pump Room Maintenance, November 2016. Curiosity made her click. The video showed a flooded mechanical room, water everywhere. Reed, younger, thinner, knee-deep in the mess, fixing a broken valve. He had no gloves, no safety gear. Only a wrench and a chalk stick, writing on the metal tank as he worked. He scribbled equations directly onto the steel. Delay, flow rate, feedback constant. And when he finished tightening the last bolt, the entire system hummed alive again. Behind him, one of the engineers said on camera, "Whatever you did, Reed, you stabilized it. That delay's gone." Reed smiled faintly. "Just listen to it breathe." Maya froze the frame. On the metal surface next to his writing, she saw it again. T-0. The same value, the same hand. 9 years earlier. She whispered, "He discovered it before anyone even knew it mattered." Footsteps echoed in the hall. She quickly unplugged the drive, stuffed it into her backpack, and slipped out the side door. But as she turned the corner, she ran right into him. Dr. Harold Voss. He looked down at her, calm, almost curious. "Working late, Miss Chen?" Maya's breath caught. "Yes, sir, just finishing lab reports." He smiled. "Lab reports don't usually involve accessing secure footage." Her heart skipped. I was just curious," he finished for her. "Curiosity is dangerous in my department." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I'd be careful where you point it." She met his eyes, trembling but steady. "I saw it," she said softly. "You took it from him." For a moment, silence filled the hallway. Then Voss smiled again, small and cold. "I took what he left behind. That's not theft. That's history." When she got back to her dorm, she couldn't stop shaking. She sat on the floor, drive still clutched in her hand, tears blurring her sight. On her laptop, she replayed Reed's voice from the old footage. "Just listen to it breathe." Those words echoed in her head, like the heartbeat of a machine still running in the dark. Down the street, in his apartment, Thomas Reed sat with the same quiet posture as always. He didn't know she had proof. He didn't know that somewhere inside the MIT servers, the truth now had a voice. Outside, the pumps along the Charles River hummed through the night, steady, alive, whispering the rhythm he once wrote on a wall no one remembered. And for the first time in years, the system was stable. Morning broke like glass, sharp, cold. Too bright to be kind. Maya Chen hadn't slept. The flash drive sat on her desk beside an untouched cup of coffee. The proof. Footage of Thomas Reed solving the equation. Footage of Dr. Harold Voss taking the credit. The truth, in 4K silence. She stared at the screen and whispered, "It's enough." Then corrected herself. "It has to be." By 9 a.m., the campus buzzed. Word had spread. The janitor had threatened legal action. No one knew where that rumor came from. But it traveled faster than light. In the cafeteria, students argued. Come on, he's a janitor, not a scientist. Still, if he really wrote it, doesn't matter. Without credentials, he's nothing. Maya heard every word. She walked past without looking up. The truth, she realized, didn't always travel with dignity. At noon, she entered the Department of Ethics office. Dr. Keller, the chairwoman, sat waiting. Gray suit, glasses, face unreadable. "Maya," Keller said, "you requested this meeting?" "Yes, ma'am." She slid the flash drive across the desk. "This contains footage from January 12th, 3 a.m. It shows Dr. Voss copying work written by Thomas Reed." Keller frowned. "Do you understand what you're accusing?" "Yes," Maya said, her voice steady. "But it's not an accusation if it's true." Keller sighed. "Dr. Voss is one of our most published researchers. This is a serious charge." Maya nodded. "Then treat it seriously." Hours later, the footage leaked. No one knew how. Maybe a clerk, maybe someone in the press room, maybe fate itself. But by evening, the file titled MIT Theft Footage to MP4 began spreading across forums and message boards. At first, few believed it. Then they watched. The janitor writing the equations, the professor photographing them. The silence afterward was deafening. By midnight, it was everywhere. CNN, Tech Daily, Science World Review. MIT genius or thief? The janitor behind the breakthrough. Academic fraud allegations shake Cambridge. Reporters camped outside Building B214. Students gathered near the dome, whispering like wind through glass. Someone taped a sign to the lab door. Justice for Reed. Inside his apartment, Thomas Reed watched it all on a flickering TV. He didn't speak, didn't move. Just sat there, eyes wet, but expression calm. The world finally said his name, but it said it like a headline, not a person. His phone rang nonstop. Reporters, former co-workers, lawyers. He let it ring, until one call came through, unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Reed?" A pause. "This is Dr. Voss." Reed's hand clenched the phone. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Voss said quietly, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Reed's voice was barely a whisper. "You took everything." "You don't understand," Voss said. "They wouldn't have listened to you, but they listened to me. Now your work's saving lives. Isn't that what you wanted?" Reed closed his eyes. "That's what thieves always say." Then he hung up. The next morning, cameras swarmed the MIT gates. The university released a statement. MIT has suspended Dr. Harold Voss pending an investigation into academic misconduct. We are aware of allegations involving former staff member Thomas Reed. In the crowd, Maya stood holding the notebook, the real one, in her hands. She whispered to the reporters who asked her questions. He never stole anything. He gave. We just never noticed what he gave us. By evening, the media storm had consumed everything. Talk shows argued. Podcasts speculated. The internet turned Reed into both saint and scandal. Some called him the genius janitor. Others called him the lucky fraud. And through it all, Thomas Reed stayed silent. He refused every interview, every invitation, every camera. He only said one thing to Maya before turning off his phone for good. Let them talk. The math already knows the truth. In the lab, Voss sat alone at his desk, surrounded by empty applause. His inbox flooded with cancellations. His grant revoked. His name, the one he'd built over decades, now carried the same weight as a lie. On his desk, he found a single note slipped under the door. No name. Just handwriting he recognized. Stability isn't the absence of error. It's knowing where it lives. He stared at it for a long time, then whispered, I know. That night, the pumps along the Charles River hummed louder than ever. No one noticed that the same control algorithm, the one Reed wrote on a mop handle, was now stabilizing medical systems across 3 hospitals. Quietly. Perfectly. Without his name, the storm had passed, but silence can be crueler than noise. 3 days after the headlines broke, the cameras moved on. The news found new scandals. The internet forgot his name. But Thomas Reed did not forget. He still woke before dawn, out of habit. Still boiled water for black coffee. Still wiped the counter, though no one would come. The world had finally seen him, then left him behind again. The notebook sat by his window, sunlight spilling across its cover. He hadn't opened it since the calls stopped. He couldn't. Every time he saw the equations, he saw faces. Reporters, professors, strangers online arguing about a man they never knew. The janitor who outsmarted MIT, the man who lied to the world, both lies in their own ways. He whispered, they don't want truth. They want a story. That afternoon, Maya visited. She brought groceries and a thermos of soup. He smiled faintly. You shouldn't waste your time on an old man, he said. It's not wasted, she replied. You taught me something no class ever could. What's that? She looked at him gently. That genius isn't a title. It's a heartbeat. He laughed softly. That's a dangerous thought at MIT. They talked for a while. About the pumps, the math, her research. When she left, she placed a small envelope on his table. For you, she said. Inside was a printed email from Boston General Hospital. A new medical control unit had just been installed, based on his algorithm. They'd used it to regulate blood flow pumps for children. Lives had been saved. At the bottom, the engineer had written, We don't know who T. Reed is, but whoever he is, thank you. He read the line again and again, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Night came quietly. He sat by the window, notebook open, watching the city lights flicker. Outside, the Charles River reflected the sky like liquid glass. He took a pen and wrote one last note beneath his oldest equation. If any of this mattered, let it matter quietly. He folded the paper, slid it between the pages, and closed the book. Then he stood up to make tea. It happened fast, a faint dizziness, a sudden blur. The mug slipped from his hand, shattered on the tile. He tried to speak. Couldn't. His right arm refused to move. He fell, his body crumpling beside the spilled tea. The sound was soft, almost gentle. Through the haze, he saw the notebook on the table. Open again, as if the pages wanted to breathe. He reached toward it. His fingers brushed the corner. And then the world went still. The next morning, the landlord found him there, the notebook open, his hand resting over it like a seal. Paramedics came. Neighbors watched from the hall. Someone whispered, "Is that the janitor from the news?" No one answered. Maya arrived later, eyes red, breath shaking. She sat beside the covered body for a long time, then reached for the notebook. On the last page, written in weak ink and uneven lines, "Tell them I wasn't angry. I was just tired of not being seen." She closed her eyes. Outside, the city carried on. Cars, horns, life, while a quiet man's name began to fade from headlines into memory. That night, back in the lab, the system Reed designed kept running. The algorithm pulsed, steady, smooth, alive. Its feedback loop finding balance where others saw chaos. The engineers monitoring it didn't know whose formula it was. They just saw one line in the code's comment section, carried over from a forgotten test file. Author, T. Reed, verified stable. And deep inside the hum of the machine, his rhythm still lived, patient, precise, eternal. The chapel at MIT was full that morning. Not for a professor, not for a donor, but for a janitor. Rain whispered against the stained glass windows. Students filled the pews, unsure why they'd come. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt. At the front, a small photo rested on a wooden easel. Thomas Reed, head slightly bowed, half smile caught in the light of some long-ago day. There were no flowers, only a mop leaning against the podium, its handle carved with faint white markings, symbols of an equation. Maya stood by the casket, holding the notebook against her chest. She looked tired, older than her years, but her eyes burned clear. When the dean finished the formal speech, a safe, polished paragraph about humility and unexpected brilliance, she stepped forward. "May I say something?" she asked. The room fell silent. She walked up to the microphone, notebook trembling in her hands. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I was a student in Dr. Voss's lab," she began. "I watched a man clean our floors, and in his spare time solve what none of us could." She opened the notebook and showed a page to the room. November 2016. His handwriting, his idea, years before the paper you all read. The dean shifted uncomfortably. The professors avoided her eyes. "He didn't steal from anyone," Maya said. "He gave this place its integrity, and it repaid him with silence." She placed the notebook on the casket. The pages fluttered open by themselves, as if the building exhaled. Inside, the final entries were visible, the same formulas that now powered 3 hospitals, 12 water stations, and countless industrial systems. And beneath them, one faint line: "If it works, let it work quietly." After the service, Dr. Keller, head of ethics, approached her. "We've concluded the investigation," she said softly. "Voss has admitted the paper's core equations weren't his." Maya's eyes didn't move from the casket. "And?" "The university board voted this morning," Keller said. "Thomas Reed's contribution will be formally recognized. The algorithm will bear his name." Maya closed her eyes. "Too late," she whispered. 2 days later, the report went public. MIT acknowledges Thomas Reed as original author of feedback stability algorithm. It was printed in every paper, cited in every journal. But no one interviewed him. No one could. Voss resigned. He issued one final statement. I took a truth that wasn't mine and built a career on it. He built truth without needing a career. The world forgave him quickly, as it often does the powerful. At night, Maya returned to the lab one last time. The halls were empty now. The smell of cleaner lingered faintly, the kind that always reminded her of him. She turned on the light and looked at the whiteboard. For a moment, it almost felt alive again. The faint shimmer of equations erased long ago. Then she took a piece of chalk and wrote a single line. In memory of Thomas Reed. He cleaned our floors and our consciences. She stepped back, tears welling, and whispered, "Now you're seen." Outside, the Charles River shimmered in the rain. A quiet pulse rippled across the water, the heartbeat of the control systems running beneath the hospitals downtown. The same equations he wrote by hand, the same timing delay. T equal 0.8 as. Perfect balance. Still holding, still saving lives. Somewhere, perhaps Thomas Reed would have smiled, because the math didn't need applause. It only needed to work. And now, finally, so did justice. The auditorium was silent. No music, no applause, only the low hum of air vents and the uneasy shifting of hundreds of people who didn't know whether they'd come for a lecture or an apology. At the center of the stage stood Dr. Harold Voss. No lab coat, no projector, just a man in a wrinkled suit, a stack of papers trembling in his hand. Behind him, on the giant LED screen, the headline still glowed, MIT Public Statement. Internal review concluded. He cleared his throat. "Before I begin," he said, "I'd like to tell you a story." He paused, searching for words that refused to come. "There was a man who worked here. You've all heard his name by now, Thomas Reed. He mopped these floors for 20 years. Most of you walked past him. I did too." A flicker of movement in the crowd, embarrassment, guilt. "He wasn't supposed to be here," Voss continued. "Not in our world. He didn't have a PhD. He didn't have grants or papers. He had a mop and a notebook." He lifted a page from his folder, a photocopy of Reed's handwriting. "These are his equations," he said quietly. "The ones I published under my name." Gasps rippled through the hall. Maya, sitting in the front row, felt her heart tighten. Voss took a breath. "I didn't steal because I needed money. I stole because I was afraid. Afraid that a man like him could see what I couldn't." He set the papers down on the podium, his voice shaking. "I told myself I was refining his work, that I'd discovered it independently. But lies have a strange way of sounding like logic when spoken by someone with a title." He looked up, eyes wet but unflinching. "I built my reputation on the silence of a man too humble to shout, and that silence killed him." The room was still. No one coughed. No one moved. On the second row, a professor lowered his head into his hands. Somewhere near the back, a student whispered, "He admitted it." Voss straightened the microphone. "I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure his name lives where it should. In our textbooks, our lectures, and our conscience." He looked at Maya. "Miss Chen, please, finish what he started." She stood slowly, tears in her eyes. He smiled faintly. Not forgiveness, not pride, just surrender. Then he stepped away from the podium and walked out of the room without another word. The dean approached the stage. "Miss Chen," he said softly, "the board has approved the dedication ceremony for next week. Would you like to speak?" Maya nodded. A week later, sunlight poured through the glass dome of the main hall. Students, professors, reporters, they all gathered around a newly mounted bronze plaque. At the top, engraved in clean serif letters, "In memory of Thomas Reed. He cleaned our floors and our consciences. Maya stood before it, holding the same notebook she had held at his funeral. Her voice carried clear across the crowd. "I used to think genius was a privilege," she began, "that it belonged to people with degrees, with offices, with funding." She opened the notebook, showing its pages, filled with equations, oil stains, and faint fingerprints. "But this was written by a man who cleaned up after everyone else. He didn't publish papers. He didn't win awards. He just saw patterns in water, in pipes, in life." Her throat caught, but she continued. "He once told me stability isn't the absence of error. It's knowing where it lives. I think he meant more than mathematics." She closed the book and placed it beside the plaque. Thomas Reed didn't belong in the lab because of a title. He belonged here because truth does. When she stepped back, the crowd stayed quiet. Not applause, not mourning, just silence. A silence heavy with respect. The bell tower struck noon. Sunlight flashed across the bronze, lighting up the words, "He cleaned our floors and our consciences." Across campus, the pumps in the engineering wing hummed in perfect rhythm. The same algorithm. The same delay constant. TEE 0.8 AS. Stable. Steady. Alive. And somewhere beneath that quiet hum, it felt as though the building itself was breathing, the way he once said machines should. Spring arrived late in Cambridge. The snow melted slowly along the Charles River, leaving behind streets that smelled of rain and iron. MIT's courtyard was alive again. Footsteps, laughter, the murmur of new beginnings. But near the entrance of Building B214, there was something new. A plaque. Bronze, clean, polished. Students passed it every day, sometimes stopping for a second, sometimes not at all. But when sunlight hit it just right, the letters gleamed like truth rediscovered. In memory of Thomas Reed, he cleaned our floors and our consciences. Maya stood before it that morning, hands in her coat pockets, coffee growing cold. She had come alone. The campus was quiet except for the hum of generators and the faint rush of the river behind her. She looked up at the plaque and whispered, "You're home now." It had been 3 months since the ceremony. The story had traveled the world. Lectures, documentaries, think pieces. Everyone wanted to claim him now. But Maya knew the truth. He wouldn't have wanted any of it. He would have wanted the pumps to run quietly, the systems to stay stable, the floors to stay clean. She smiled faintly. "You won, Mr. Reed. You just didn't live long enough to see it." Inside the lab, the air felt different now, lighter. The board that once held his stolen equation now carried a framed copy of his notebook's final page, and beneath it, written in chalk by Maya's own hand, "If it works, let it work quietly." Every few weeks, students from around the world came to see it. Some touched the plaque like a relic. Others took photos, whispering his name as though it carried something sacred. They didn't know the sound that once haunted those halls, the soft rhythm of a mop gliding across tile, the hum of a mind solving without permission. But they could feel it, that quiet pulse of honesty still alive between the equations. One evening, Maya stayed late in the lab. She'd been running simulations on a new control model, a variant of Reed's. When the code stabilized, the graph smoothed perfectly. She leaned back, smiling through tears. "Still teaching me," she murmured. On her monitor, she named the file, Reed Final Stable. Then she turned off the lights. Outside, the courtyard was silver in moonlight. The plaque glowed faintly, dew gathering along its edges. And for a moment, only a moment, it felt like the air carried his presence, a whisper, a breath, as if the building itself exhaled his name. Thomas Reed, a man who never sought credit, never demanded justice, only balance. At 2:58 a.m., the same hour he once solved an impossible equation, the maintenance lights flickered softly in the hall. Somewhere deep in the system, a feedback loop adjusted itself. Stable, perfect, alive. The pumps hummed in rhythm. TE 0.8 seconds. And in that hum, between the silence and the machine's breath, it almost sounded like a heartbeat, not of a system, but of a man. He never published a paper. He never gave a lecture. But his equation runs through every machine that saves a life. Some names fade from books. Others live in the quiet between equations.